Hello, it's Marcus Cattani here. I would just like to go through some hints and tips about the structure of a scientific paper. First of all, let's just think about our searcher and how we can encourage them to become one of our readers and potentially someone who's going to cite our paper in their own work. So when someone's looking for a paper, they will start off with the search engine, and unless they know that you've written the paper, they'll probably look for keywords. Then if those keywords bring up a series of options, they will then select it probably based on the title. Then if the title makes sense, the abstract. Then if they've got through the abstract, if it was me, then I zoom to the end of the paper and I look at the conclusion. And then if I want to know more, I'll go back and have a look at the discussion. Okay, so those are important points about how we need to write our papers. They need to provide people with some information about each of those different sections to enable our paper to be found and then to communicate to our readers our research. So let's have a quick look at those sections. So the way that scientific papers are structured is really important because there's a consistency and a convention in the content of each of these different sections, and they work quite well to communicate research. So first of all, our summary. So the summary is a series of the main points from each section, usually one page or 300 to 500 words depending on the journal. The introduction defines the problem that we're trying to solve and some sort of background, some justification for the need for the research or a gap in the knowledge. So you're showing your reader early on that there is a contemporary need for this research to be done with the facts and figures that justify the project. Your literature review may continue that discussion and that justification with a review of what's recently happened in that field or a review of the seminal papers, that's the most important papers in that discipline. And again, it justifies the need for the research. Quite often, the research will also include a summary of other methodologies to show that there is a practical and a realistic way of addressing the problem or the research need. So now by the end of the lit review or the background, the reader's going to have a pretty good idea about the need for this research. Well, they should do. So you need to paint a picture of the need of the research so that by the time the person gets to the aims and objectives, they've got a pretty good idea that where this research project is going. The aims and objectives set out the response to the gap in knowledge or the need for the research. So first of all, our aim describes the overall outcome of the research. It's a simple statement of the outcome, and most papers will have one or maybe two aims. Now, the objectives are the milestones that we're going to use to achieve the aim. Everything that we do in the project is going to be described by our objectives. Nothing can be done in the research that doesn't fit into the objectives. So the objectives, there's usually say 3, sometimes 4 objectives for each aim, and they are the series of measurable milestones to achieve the aim. Okay, then we get to our method. Our method is a series of steps which we're going to follow to achieve those objectives. And as I say there on the slide, the gold standard for this is that the reader should be given enough information about those steps to be able to do the work themselves. Now the chances are they're not going to do that, but it's just a test that you should apply to your method. Could the reader follow those steps and achieve the same outcome as I have? So try and make sure your method has that amount of detail in those steps. So once you've described your method, you describe your results in the same order, preferably, as you've described your objectives, because the reader then becomes familiar with the flow of your paper. You know, your aims lead into your objectives lead into your method leads into your results. And if the results are presented in the same order as your objectives, you've got some structure there that the reader will understand and become familiar with. Importantly, you don't apply any subjectivity to your results. You're providing the reader with the facts. The subjectivity and your professional opinion is presented in the discussion. Now, the discussion is the way in which you can then bring together your results and you create new knowledge in response to your aims and objectives. So you're showing now how the results respond to the purpose of the paper. We say that we're synthesizing new knowledge. We're creating new knowledge from those results. And here you should apply your professional judgment. You're the one that knows this project inside out, so bring out the best bits, highlight and discuss the main results, and particularly highlighting any really important things that you found. Bring them to the attention of the reader. Then if there is some more work to be done in response to the aims and objectives, they can go into your recommendations. Limitations are what you haven't done, or whether there were some scope issues with the project that you couldn't address. Your recommendations and limitations can go after the conclusion if you've addressed all your aims and objectives and the recommendations are for future work, for example. Your conclusion then brings the paper to an end. You're responding to the aims and the gap in knowledge that you described in your introduction. So it's important to make sure that you do comment on the outcome of the paper to achieve the aims, and maybe some of the highlights of the paper and how this is going to address some of those things that you said in the introduction. Importantly, this isn't the place to introduce anything new. Everything new should have been presented early on, so please don't include anything new, particularly new results, in the conclusion. And then after your conclusion, your reference list and any appendices. Okay, I hope that was useful.